Hayley.
I'm Dr. Ashley.
And I'm Dr. Leanne.
And we're psychologists. Welcome to the 7th episode of our podcast called Do You Ever Feel? These podcasts are all about common dilemmas and experiences that people have. We provide some insights into the psychology behind that, some strategies and advice that you can put into place straight away. For this episode, we're continuing to focus on children and young people. And our last episode was about emotional regulation and how we manage that with children and young people. This episode is about anxiety and how we can manage and support anxiety with children and young people. So it's, do you ever feel like your child is often worried? So Ashley, could you tell us a little bit about what anxiety looks like and what it is?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think it's important to note that it is a normal human response. We all will worry about things from time to time. And children are no different. Children, they have their own little anxieties, their own little worries. It could be things about, worried about, will I make friends, or worried about how the school day is going to go. It could be a whole host of different reasons, but really what it is whenever they perceive there's a threat or they're in danger, that's when their minds will worry about things. And it could be even things that might seem to other people as really, really small things, but to them and their little world and things like that, it can be a really big thing for them. And obviously it's very real for what they are going through and how they're experiencing that. And as parents or teachers or anyone that works with children or relates with children, it's one of those ones where you might notice some changes to like their habits and things like that. So you might notice that maybe they're not eating as much, maybe that they're not feeling hungry, because a lot of the time if you are experiencing anxiety, you can feel that you don't have the same appetite. It impacts you like physiologically, like it does have an impact. And it might even be things like noticing that maybe they're not sleeping as well as they used to. They might be up during the night, they might be experiencing like lots of like nightmares and things like that. So this can be a sign that they might be worrying quite a lot, if it's impacting on their kind of day-to-day routines and life and things like that. And in terms of like what you might see as well, you might see the child that you work with or the child that you have is maybe complaining of having like tummy aches,
Right.
feeling sick and things like that. And again, it's all to do with like how anxiety impacts on the body and how your body responds to that. Because I suppose what it is, it's when you are worried or when you're fearful, you're almost like in that fight or flight kind of situation where it's almost like that survival kind of mechanism. And so what actually happens is your body has specific like responses to help you deal and focus on like getting out of danger and keeping yourself safe.
Children don't always have that vocab either, do they? So sometimes it kind of manifests as something that is quite psychological as physical. So we call that somatization, where like you were saying, if you feel anxious, you might have a tummy ache, or I'm stressed, so I've got a headache, I'm feeling low, so I feel sick. So that's their way of kind of vocalizing that. So sometimes you might not always see those signs that are as obvious. It might be like you say those physical symptoms. You think, okay, where's that coming from? That's really interesting. Or the opposite, they might not even show anything. They might be the children who go, especially in the school context, because when they're home, they're a lot more safe, secure. So you might see that as like mum and dad, but in school context, they might just want to be powering through because it's so challenging. And there might be the ones that are more withdrawn or going under the radar or a bit shy, not raising their hand, and not socialising.
Yeah, I would say that if you notice changes to behaviour, because obviously you'll know what's normal for them, like what their kind of normal like personality is and how they interact with people and things. And if you notice that something's changed, it might just be a sign that maybe they are worrying a lot. And you might, like some children, obviously if they have lots of anxieties, lots of worries, it might actually get to a stage where they don't want to go to school and things like that. Like so some children like feel that, like to avoid all these different difficult situations, they want to remove themselves from the situation. So what I would say is just be mindful of what's normal for your child. And if you notice, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that because like there's been like the odd change or that little change here or there that, they must be experiencing anxiety, but it's just something to keep an eye on just in case that develops.
And we know that, like, post COVID, we've seen increase of anxiety. I think there's still emerging research coming through based on what the outcome and impact of that was on children and young people. And one of the stark findings is the increasing rates of anxiety as an impact of that have been long-standing. So it's really important that parents monitor that, as you said.
We've been socially isolated for so long. It's so hard to try and go back into that normal circumstance and still be able to function in the way that you did before, and that, of course, is going to cause anxiety.
Yeah,
it's tricky. So I suppose following on from that, from what you were saying, Ashley, is looking at what kind of scenarios are we most likely to see children feeling anxious in, and what is also, I suppose, the norm, what would be maybe age appropriate. I would say that the most common ones are social evaluative situations. So that can mean things like, and these are so normal, I think every single child will have gone through these at some point, and we will have done when we were children. Things like being bullied and being teased. Of course you're going to feel anxious about those things. Things such as for the older teens, maybe like if they're starting to kind of have like boyfriends, girlfriends in the dating kind of world, that's, you know, embarrassment, fear of failure, all the things where you put into challenging social situations where you're finding it really difficult to navigate that. And when you're a young person and it's in a transitory time in your life and you're experiencing all of these new situations, of course you're going to be anxious about those because you have that lack of exposure. So that's really common. School-based anxiety, so like school avoidance. So we'll know as Ed Psychs, we come across this so often, and that is so common for all of those above reasons, because of course the social evaluative kind of situations, because of course in the home context you don't have as many of those challenges, because again you're at home, you're safe, and you're kind of put in a situation where there's lots of changes and you don't know how people are going to react. Sometimes it could be around things like overwhelming social situations or unexpected changes. We know that a lot of people who experience anxiety, and we spoke about this last time, appreciate safety and sameness. So if they haven't been prepared for things, or there's a new routine or a new class teacher, or if we're thinking about the home context, there's been a change to routine, or maybe, you know, you're going to go on holiday and they're not sure about where you're going to stay, what that's going to be like, are they going to like it, or a new play date. So lots of situations like that. Another one we see, particularly with the older kids as well who are going through exams, is test anxiety, of course, but overall as well, I just think it's that whole academic kind of feeling that, oh my God, I'm going to fail. I'm going to let myself down, I'm going to let my teachers down, my mum and dad down. It's a lot of academic pressure for children and young people, because we do live in a society that is so meritocratic. It's kind of like your value, your worth is like based on your merits, and we know that's not the case. There's so much more to life and a person as to what makes them successful. But that also has a huge impact, because a lot of the kids' a lot of their life is their schooling. So of course that's going to make them anxious if they feel that they've not got that feeling of competency or confidence in what they do as well. So that would be another one which we see really, really commonly. And I suppose this one as well is the same for adults. Obviously you're going to fear getting hurt, getting injured, things like people dying. All of those things are very, very common and very normal responses. So I would say that when it becomes something which is something that you should maybe address more, or think, okay, is this more of a worry or an anxiety than what I would expect for someone of that age? What you need to be thinking about is this in context for their age? So if maybe they're 15 and they can't sleep in their own bed because they're struggling with their anxiety so much, you might say, okay, that's possibly more what we might have seen in primary school age. That's a little bit out of context. Maybe that's something we might think that's a bit more of a concern. So is it age appropriate? The second one would be, is it impacting in an area of their life? Their studies, their friendships, their hobbies, or their schooling as well, or family life in general. So if you're noticing that it's starting to impact that, or it's not age appropriate, that's when you'd say, okay, let's seek some further support.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of like the things that we can do to support children and young people that are experiencing anxiety, I think really one of the starting points is to understand what some of those triggers around anxiety are, and you've just demonstrated what a wide range of things it could possibly be. And so sometimes knowing the source, if it's something that's coming up consistently and frequently, and of cause for concern, really unpicking what some of those triggers might be. I think an important thing for parents to be aware of in this day and age, particularly with the iPads and you know how much access children have to social media, is what they're exposing themselves to on social media, and also like watching TV and news channels. That's all age appropriate, because it has quite a significant impact on how they're feeling and their anxiety levels. So we would definitely recommend to, you know, to monitor those things and limit exposure to news that could be triggering this anxiety. And another a starting point again is, I think, going back to what you were saying earlier, Ashley, is that start with showing children what anxiety is. And so what I mean by that, you can, and we do this within our role sometimes, is that you can sit down, you can draw a stick person. That would be a stick person if it was me, or a fine art piece of a person, and then point arrows to different parts of the body. And when you're feeling anxious and worried, where do you feel it? You feel it in your tummy, you feel it in your head, so that they can then become aware of what some of those symptoms are. So that's really teaching them and normalizing the experience of that, so that they can then go on to think about, you know, what some of the self-soothing strategies are, and they can recognize that it is anxiety and when it's anxiety. And we mentioned this in the last episode around regulation, but it's incredibly important and really applies to anxiety as well, in terms of normalizing it for children and young people, and that's emotion coaching. So I would just take the first step of that, name it to tame it, validate it, attune to how your child's feeling, recognize the anxiety, and let them know that you can see that they're anxious and nervous, and empathize with that. I think that's really important starting point of managing it.
So yeah, so sometimes it can be helpful to have, like, you know, almost like a tool you can reach out and use like in the moment, like to help you deal with the situation. So what I quite like the idea of is like almost like, if you have a child who's maybe a bit younger, like maybe having like a box. It could be like their CAM box, and what you do is like you could like fill it with things that would be like kind of soothing to them. So it might be things like, you know, having like some colouring in books and some pens, and because that can be very, very therapeutic for people as well. I'm sure obviously lots of people nowadays see, like, you know, the mindfulness colouring in books for adults, like, and there's a reason for that. And I think it's that repetitive. It's very, very it's just so self-soothing. It's like very therapeutic, and it's like it's just so nice and relaxing for someone to be doing that. So you could have things like colouring in books, pens. You could have maybe like some simple like puzzles or something to keep their mind kind of focused. Play-Doh is a good one as well. I feel like having things that you can manipulate with your hands is like really good, because it's like it kind of getting rid of like any tensions and things, like keep your hands busy. Like it's a good way of kind of managing anxieties, managing worries. You might have little kind of fidget toys, stress balls, or you can basically create this with your child, and they could like really take an active you know, part in that, and like in designing what's going to be in their special CAM box. And I think it's nice as well, because what one activity you could actually do is decorate the box. Like that could be a thing, and like make it very special, and have like their favourite colours and things like that. Yeah, and there could be even little things as like maybe like if they've got a particular favourite smell, if you happen to have like something like that. Like I know lots of people love like lavender. It's very like relaxing and things like that. Like a little sachet of like lavender and things that's just like, it could just help them like regulate. So when they are experiencing those worries, it's like, okay, well I have my CAM box, right? Okay, let me just like work through this, and like what do I fancy doing right now, and they can kind of pick and choose. So that could be really, really helpful. And I suppose it could work for all different ages. You know, you would just obviously make it more appropriate, like depending on obviously what your interests are.
It's a good idea for school too, isn't it? If you think like all the kids who have got that school avoidance or are anxious about school, because you can use that as a transitional type object. So if they know that like this is something that calms them at home, to have that thing to then be in the school context as well as like a strategy to generalize, that you could
Yeah.
use it across contexts, or maybe if you're
Absolutely.
out on a trip or on
Yeah.
a holiday, like you were saying earlier, that's
Yeah,
different.
yeah.
That would be a good thing to kind of bring along with you. So it's like a
Yeah.
transitional thing.
Yeah, and it could be something so simple. It could even just be like, an old shoebox that you have. Like, it doesn't have to be anything
Yeah.
like fancy. You'd obviously decorate it and make it special looking and things like that. But that could be another like nice activity for them, and just to make it feel that that's their special little box that they can refer to when they are experiencing like worries and things like that. So I think that's quite a nice little thing to do. And also, so there's a book that I find is really really helpful for children. It's called My Hidden Chimp. It's by Professor Steve Peters, and he's the author of the book The Chimp Paradox.
Yeah.
So The Chimp Paradox is a fantastic book. I recommend it to so many people. It's all about this idea that we all have, it's almost as if we all have like a chimp that lives within us, and it's like the chimp is like our emotional part of the brain, and what we have to do is we have to learn how we control that chimp, how we manage that, so that the human side of the brain is more in control and more logical and things like that. And I mean, that might be helpful maybe for like the parents or teachers, like to maybe read that book for themselves. But for the children themselves, he's actually written like a specialised almost version of it, and it's lovely. It's like got all these like fantastic illustrations, and it's all about like what the chimp might think and feel and how it might respond, and it helps the child. It's a very accessible way of understanding how the brain works, like your emotional brain, your logical brain, and like how they're always kind of fighting with one another, and like so I think that would be something like quite nice actually to work through, and like you could share like read it together with your child, and then when they have got experiences in the future, you could make references like, oh, I wonder if that's your chimp that's making you feel that way, So I think there's something quite nice about that as well, because it's externalizing. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just like, oh, it's the chimp.
Yeah.
It's like it just. And I think it's a nice like visual for the children to think of. It's like, oh, I've got this chimp, and it's my chimp that's emotional and things like that. So yeah, and I think that could be really helpful.
Yeah, that's a really nice one. I like that one. Another one that I was thinking, like you're saying, it's nice to have things you can do in the moment.
Yeah.
I think depending on where you are, you could do this in the moment. I think it is nicer to kind of do this technique because it's a mindfulness technique. When you are in a quieter, kind of safer space, it's like a reflective type thing. But say, for example, if you're, in the car or on the bus or, in a safe space in school, you've got a moment, you can do it there as well. So I think you can do this if you know it off by heart at any kind of point. So mindfulness is just this idea of, I know you mentioned about the mindfulness colouring, about being in the present moment. And what we know about a lot of people who are anxious, they're not in the present moment because you're worried about, oh my God, what did I just say to so-and-so? That's so embarrassing. You're looking in the past. Or you're looking into the future. Oh my God, I've got French next lesson, or I've got to go home and do all this homework. So you're thinking about the future. So you're anxious because you're not thinking about the now. You're not in the present. You're in one of the others. So being in that present moment can help to calm us or ground us. So this is called the grounding technique. A really common technique that's really helpful to use just to kind of get you back into that present moment to reduce that anxiety. So it's called the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding technique. And I'm going to go through each of the 5 stages. So if people want to practice this as I go along, that's absolutely fine. So you need to start off by being able to take some deep breaths in and deep breaths out. I usually say around about 5, so doing 1 deep breath in, and then 1 deep breath out, and then you can close your eyes if you want to. I always think it's nice to start with your closed eyes because it kind of like helps you again to kind of ground you. It kind of blocks out all the other senses that are kind of happening around you a little bit more. So when you've had your 5 deep breaths in and out, I always think it's nice to kind of feel what does your body feel like in that moment as well, because you don't kind of stop and kind of take a step back to kind of think about something as simple as, how do my toes feel in my socks at this time when your eyes are closed? Or like, what are you sat on? Like, what does that feel like? Am I comfortable? Am I not comfortable? Can I feel my heart rate? So kind of like being more in tune with your body. Then when you've had time to kind of reflect on that, you can start on the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So you can open your eyes if you want to, or you can keep them closed. I kind of like to keep mine closed, but the first one is 5 things you can see. So if you don't remember what you could see, it might be nice to open your eyes to have a look, but it might be almost like a challenge as well. Okay, before I close my eyes, what could I see? So 5 things in the room that you can see. And then also think about, what were those things that I could see? What colour were they? What shape were they? Again, just kind of like getting your mind to kind of ground and be in the present and kind of reflect on what's in your environment, your immediate environment. Then the fourth one, so you've done the 5 things you can see, it's 4 things that you can touch. So again, you might be sat down. So it might be, what does the sofa or the bed feel like on your bottom, or what do your clothes feel like on your skin? What does my hair feel like against the back of my neck? You know, can you feel the air conditioning? Can you feel a breeze? All those sorts of things. So 4 things that you can feel. The next one is 3 things that you can hear. So that can be, can I hear cars going past the window outside? If you're in a room, can you maybe hear mum and dad or brothers and sisters? If you're in school, can you hear like pupils going past or a teacher talking? All those sorts of things as well. The second one, because you've done the 5, 4, 3. The second one is things that you can smell. So this one can be a difficult one at times, because you might think, I can't smell anything, especially if you're not maybe near, I don't know, the things that are really obvious, like a kitchen or something like that. So I always say that if you can't smell something in particular, and it could even be like, you know, the shampoo that you just used, or maybe like the clothes that you've just washed, and, you know, you might smell the washing powder. Think about your favourite smells if you can't smell anything in your immediate environment. If you like the smell of grass or a certain dish being cooked, amazing. Think about that smell. How does that smell make you feel? Is there a certain memory attached to that smell? And the last one is one thing that you can taste. Again, that can be difficult. It could be that you've just eaten something. So I know I've eaten like some very sour sweets earlier, so I've still got that sourness in my mouth. But it could also be you've just brushed your teeth and you can taste that. Or and again, if you can't taste anything, think about your favorite taste. Like, what kind of things do you love the kind of taste of? And then that can help you to kind of like give you like that happy kind of memory and that kind of nice sense as well. So that's the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And when you've thought of all those things, you can have a few more deep breaths, and you might feel, okay, I feel a little bit more relaxed, a bit more in the present moment.
Such a great technique, and just really helpful, as you say, just to bring us back to the present moment when we're worrying about things. So if you would like any further support or advice, please reach out to us on our Instagram page called Feel the Psychology, all one word, and we'll be happy to help. So thank you for watching this episode, and look forward to joining you in the next one. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.